All right, yay, we are finally live. Oh my goodness. My apologies for that wait, you guys. So sorry about that. But welcome. And thank you for all for being here. Let me just check some settings really quick. Really quick since I know we're running behind today. Looks good. It looks good. As always, if anyone notices any buffering or anything, just let me know. But hello, welcome. Thank you so much again for being here for another round of Q&As. Happy Sunday, everyone, or Monday, depending on where in the world you are. Hello, Mystical. Hello, B. Hello, Empress. Hi. Montana says hi. Hello, Rose. Hello. Good to see everybody. Like I said, we'll be diving in here in just a moment. I know running behind today, so I don't want to take up too much more time before we go ahead and dive on in. But I do like to give it just a couple seconds to allow people to get notified, come on in, and we'll go ahead and get started in just a moment. And I've got a really adorable surprise for everybody today. Just one moment. Hello, Neil. Northwest Wind. Hi. Awesome. Kristinaki, hello. Yeah, this sweatshirt's awesome. Cthulhu Kitty. Awesome. Hello, Ian Z. Hello, Babab. Oh, I'm excited. Show the kitties. You already know. Whew. It's hot in here. Oh, little tykes are getting sleepy. All right, let's go ahead and dive on in. Why not? Because I know it has already been quite a minute. We've already got about 50 or so people in here, and I expect that number to grow. So again, thank you guys so much for being here. Welcome for another Sunday, which means another round of Q&As. We talk all things manifestation and the law of assumption so that all of you can get a better grasp, better understanding, and more clarity about the law, which is the whole reason why I'm here. Just a couple quick things before we jump in and officially get started. I do have down below links and resources to my coaching programs and my workshops and masterclasses. And the waitlist for one-on-one coaching will be opening again soon. So if you are not on the waitlist, if you're interested in being on that waitlist and being notified when that happens, I definitely recommend checking down below. The link to sign up is down there. And be sure if you are on the waitlist for one-on-one coaching that you are checking your spam folders. And it might be easier to go ahead and whitelist the email address. I know some people have said that they never got the announcement email, so make sure that you're checking all the things because sometimes MailChimp be doing that. Anyways, without further ado, I do have some special guests with me today. As I promised, I've had a number of people reach out asking if I could bring some guys aboard today. So I am a foster mama. I've been fostering animals on and off for ever since I was about 19. And these little guys here, let me go ahead and grab one. Hi, little tyke. They're super tiny. Yeah. And they like to make a lot of noise. They love to yell. They've all just been fed and cozy, and they're just curling up to go to sleep here in a moment. Yeah. This here's Cowboy. He's a little boy. They are all 3 weeks old today. So I do have them in a playpen over by my side here. So they're not going to be out running around in the background. They're a little bit too young for that. They just started learning how to walk. But I'm hoping by next stream, once this place is completely kitten proof, I'll go ahead and let these guys be running around. You gonna say hi? Say hi. Oh. And this big guy here, he's the biggest one. He's a chonk master. And this is Bebop. I know. Say hi. Bebop is just getting over an eye infection, so that's why his eye looks a little bit wonky. But he's still really cute. Super sweet. And lastly, we got the little runt of the litter. Oh, I know. This is Rocksteady. And she is big mad. Oh, she's purring. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but she's purring. A little tiny kitten purse. So these are the little babies. They're going to be with me for the next handful of weeks until they are going to go up for adoption. But I had so many people reach out asking if I could introduce the kitties, so there we go. I know. Super sweet. It is such a fun age. Like I said, I've got them in a playpen by me. Maybe next week I'll have them out running around more, but a little bit too young for that just yet. Okay, without further ado, let me go ahead and get some disinfectant. The foster mom life. All right, let's go ahead and dive on in. Caffeine. Oh my God, I need all the caffeine. Yeah, get some sleep, you guys. Okay. Mystical's got a good question. Hey, Missy, if we believe it's going to happen, is that the same thing as believing it's done? Will it manifest if we know it's going to happen, like a natural knowing? Yes. Yes. That is, when we say it's done, it's essentially the feeling is it's already complete. Even if the 3D is not reflecting that yet, we are identifying as done. It does sometimes feel like a very natural knowing, that sense of everything is complete. Yeah. Yeah. And I know it can be confusing. Neville would say when it comes to subconscious impressions, it's a knowing that it's done, it's already happened. We're just waiting for external confirmation. So yeah. Good question. I'm glad you guys like the kitties. Should I keep visualizing till I feel I'm that person, or should I leave one impression? How did you how did you make your SB say he treasured you in your video? You fully believed it. Good questions. I'm trying to make sure I understand correctly. Should you keep visualizing? Yeah, we want to keep imagining until it begins to feel natural, until it begins to feel solidified. You will know the feeling when it occurs. You will not be able to miss it. It feels like a secure. It feels like a knowing. So yeah, we want to keep visualizing until we're no longer feeling that sense of separation or that sense of, there's still this thing outside of me, right? Yeah, once impressed, it is done. How did you make your SP say he treasured you? So I think you're referring to my SP story where we were on the Santa Monica Pier, and that was a scene that I had. So I had done SATs for a couple weeks. Oh dear! Hey, stop fighting. You might hear them in the background. Don't worry, they're fine. Hey, be nice to your sister. Goodness. So sorry, guys. So in that scene, I had imagined him saying everything. I had brought all of my senses into the imaginal act, and it felt incredibly real. And as far as I'm concerned, it was real. It felt like the real thing, the quote unquote real thing in the 3D. And yeah, I fully believed it. Yeah, absolutely. We want to get to a place where we believe that imagination is reality. That is the only reality, right? The 3D is just the outpicturing of imagination. But absolutely, I fully believed it. So, basically, to sum it up, yes, you want to imagine until you feel that impression left, until it will feel like a feeling of satisfaction, it will feel like a completion, and it will feel like you don't need to do it anymore. You That's the Sabbath, essentially. Um, and yeah, yeah, you will see it come to pass. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, Lola. Do I wish SP a happy birthday? I caught him on a lie in July. We broke up and no contact since. I miss him, but I don't want to reach out to him. I know I'll feel bad if I don't. He went all in for my birthday. Good question. As far as reaching out to people in the 3D, I mean, I'm never gonna say, "No, don't ever do that," but we wanna be mindful of where it's like, the urge to reach out to them or the impulse to reach out to them, like, where is that stemming from? Is it stemming from a place that feels like guilt or anxiety? It's not always ideal to reach out from a place like that, um, but if I mean, if you feel bad if you don't reach out, I mean, if it's gonna feel guilty if you don't reach out, I mean, I would meditate on it for a moment and see where you are at and see what feels right to do. And I mean, make sure that you're always in a place though where you're not gonna be affected or you're not going to allow yourself to be affected by the 3D circumstances. If you feel like you might be easily triggered by the 3D circumstances, then I personally would not recommend doing it from that place. But again, it's really one of those things where it's going to be personal and it's going to be subjective and different for everybody. But meditate on it for a moment, see where everything lies within you, and you'll receive your answer there. Be still and go within. Yeah. Oh, stop it. Um, go back to my spot. Good to have you here, Neely. Hi, Missy. Can you give tips on how to imagine when busy during the day? For example, when being at the grocery store. Perhaps telling someone in my imagination that I am now who I want to be. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And as far as how to keep ourselves busy in the day to day or what to do when we're busy during the day to day. Yeah, we can imagine all sorts of scenarios. In fact, we do imagine all sorts of scenarios in the day to day, right? Um, Now, if we're preoccupied with something, if we're in the middle of work and things are hectic and we have to keep our focus somewhere, then I mean, obviously do that. But if you're talking about just some examples of things that you can do, yeah, I would imagine perhaps talking to a coworker and hearing them congratulate you or confirm whatever it is that you desire. Hear yourself tell people that you are now the person that you want to be, or that you know, you've received or you've succeeded in what you're aiming to achieve, whatever that might be. I don't know exactly what your aims are or what you're trying to manifest, but yeah, we can be throughout the day to day. We can absolutely be imagining the ideal scenarios and things that would imply that we are this person. And really though, not just imagine it, but become start to identify with it. Start to identify with that version of you in imagination versus the 3D circumstances. And if it feels like you're having trouble in the day to day, I absolutely do recommend taking advantage of that window before bed. That window before bed is a really, really powerful one. And if we are practicing and playing in imagination in that time when there's nothing, the day is done, there's nothing busy, we're not distracted by anything, um, you'll start to naturally feel better and better throughout your day to day. And it won't be so much of a like conscious redirection. It will start to naturally flow more. But yeah, Hope all that made sense. Hi, Missy. Someone close to me has been dealing with an illness. Oh, I'm so sorry. I keep imagining them as healthy, but 3D and this person is showing up ill still. How to persist in seeing them healthy? Thank you in advance. Yeah, no, of course. Thank you for that question. And I know that's one of the hardest things we deal with in the 3D when somebody we know and somebody that we care about is sick. I know it's not ideal. Um, but this really is a fantastic opportunity to really go all in on your practice and use this as I don't want to say test. It's not a test, but use this as something to really help keep your focus, keep your attention, like a good practice for keeping your attention on only what you want to see and only what you want to hear. And I know that it can feel difficult when the 3D shows us otherwise because, again, we are super conditioned to the 3D and we've been identifying with the 3D our whole lives. But regardless, this is also a fantastic opportunity to really practice revision and even revising on the spot. So if you receive an update about your friend and it's not what you want to hear, I personally would revise that on the spot. I would, at the very least, revise it at the end of the day and just continue to stretch and exercise that muscle. Continue to stretch and exercise that muscle. So long as you keep imagining them as healthy, that's fantastic. But we really also have to be mindful of how much of our attention we're giving to the 3D, right? How much of our attention are we giving to these outside circumstances? And are we allowing them to make us double-minded? And that's really the aim of this practice here. Start to identify with the imagination, like seeing that as reality, not the 3D. And I know it takes some getting used to it, but I would absolutely use this as a chance to practice and get really good at revision and revising on the spot, and just in your day to day practice shutting out everything and really going within, getting to the place where it feels done. Like when you imagine and you see them healthy, like get to the place where you feel that relief. It should feel like relief. And if it doesn't feel like that, that should be the aim. That should be the practice. I hope that makes sense. Oh god, that's so cute. Uh, how do you live in the end while dealing with things in your old reality that conflict with what you're manifesting? For example, manifesting a lottery win while being broke and having to look for a job. Thank you. Yeah, this yeah, dealing with the 3D is by and far the most challenging aspect to all of this. But if we are continuing to identify with the 3D, if we are continuing to see ourselves as somebody who is broke, if we are continuing to believe that we are somebody who is struggling to have money, that's where we get, again, it's that vicious cycle of double-mindedness. Um, I would be setting aside time as frequently as you can through the day to day to practice really going within and get very clear on what that what that ideal world looks like, where if a lottery win is what you desire, what does that version of you look like? What does a day in the life of them look like what would you be doing? Imagine setting up meetings with your financial advisor. Imagine buying a private jet. Imagine setting up a charity, nonprofit organization for a cause that you're very passionate about. Just really practice getting familiar and building the world where you are wealthy within, and start to really, really, really use that as a way to sharpen and shape that ultimate wish fulfilled, right? Because if we're just kind of sort of kind of thinking about the lottery win, but most of the time we're fixed on the 3D circumstances, that's just going to continue to feel more and more challenging. And that's where, again, a lot of double-mindedness comes through. So really practice setting aside times in the day-to-day where you are deliberately building upon this world, where you are now a lottery winner, where you are now a multimillionaire, or whatever that might look like. Like, start to get so clear with that version of you. And really, like, this is the art of becoming that person. I understood the concept of everyone issue pushed out through Taylor Swift's song Anti-Hero. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Yep. Yep. True words, true facts. Yeah, that should be the anthem. It's the anthem of everyone issue pushed out. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, KB. Oh, whoop. I have such a strong feeling SP is coming in and my health is better. I am choosing that version of me every day. I'm envisioning my desired scenes. Time doesn't matter, but it's about to be 3 years. Tips. Time doesn't matter. Yeah. Well, so does time matter or not? um, because that sentence contains two contradictions. On the one hand, time doesn't matter, but it's been 3 years. Well, it can't be both, you see? And that's we really gotta be careful about that. Like, are we actually believing that time does not matter? Um, yeah, 'cause that's a difficult one. We are so conditioned by time. And to that I say, in your imagination, time does not exist. In your imagination, you decide if it's been 3 years or if you just saw SP this morning or afternoon, or if he's there with you right now. And that's really the point that we want to get clear on. In imagination, you saw them yesterday. You saw them just a couple hours ago. Do you know what I mean? Instead of it's been 3 years. If we're continuing to bring into awareness, it's been X amount of time, that yeah. Yeah. So instead of the feeling like SP is coming, get familiar with he's already here in imagination, and really start to identify with that version of you, if that makes sense. Right? Because we're not imagining in the hopes that this will lead to something else someday. We're imagining that it is already complete. It is already finished. And really go all in. I think I'm just saying I'm surprised it hasn't played out yet. Yeah, and if you're curious, so if we're ever wondering why something has not happened yet, um, we wanna maybe pay closer attention to our mental diet and really observe where we are truly dwelling in our day-to-day. Because I remember vividly a time in my SB journey where I thought for certain that I was living in the end. I thought I had a great mental diet. I thought I was doing all the things. And then he showed up in a way that was not ideal. It took me by surprise, and I naturally got frustrated, but I decided, am I really, am I truly living in the state? Am I truly, or am I just, am I just trying to like delude myself? And upon closer observation, I was still playing a lot of old stories. I was still playing a lot of old stories in my mind, and I was still feeding into the old conceptions, and I was not even aware of it until I really began to observe, until I really took that objective, non-critical look at what I was thinking and doing. So if we're ever curious as to why things are not here, yeah, pay close attention to your mental diet, because that's how we can gauge. That's how we can gauge what state of consciousness we are actually truly dwelling in more often than not. Hello, IK. Bebop, Lottie coming. Yeah, Bebop's a chonky boy. He's almost twice the weight of his sister, and it's the same lit. Like, he a big dude. All right, where was my spot? Mm, sorry. Yeah, and I do my best to not skip anybody. If I do, it is not intentional, and I apologize in advance. Um, where was I? Hi, Missy. Doesn't the ideal self concept come automatically when we are in the state? Neville didn't do self concept to fix his limiting beliefs, like I'm chosen, I'm wanted, when his wife didn't want him at first. Yes. Okay. This is important. And yeah. Imagining is what will if you go to the end in imagination, if you are beginning to identify with the version of you that already is the person you want to be, already has the thing that you want, that is changing your that is how we change our self-concept, right? Yeah, we don't do self-concept to fix our limiting belief. Like self-concept is not a technique. So when I hear a lot of people say I'm doing self-concept, it sounds very bizarre to me because your concept of self is just the sum total of your beliefs and assumptions, like who you believe yourself to be and what you believe about other people. So, yeah, this isn't about, saying general affirmations about I'm loved, I'm chosen, whatever. Uh, when you imagine, when you go to the end, and when you are beginning to identify with that state of consciousness, that's how we change the beliefs. That's how we change the conception of self because you are now becoming the version of you that you desire to be, and thus the beliefs and assumptions must change, right? I hope that makes sense. But yeah, Dana, you are absolutely correct. Yeah, there's nothing to fix because everything is already complete. Nothing's broken. That's a really really good point. Yeah, and I go into that heavily in my self-concept masterclass, and I am coming out with a video talking more about this because there's a lot of confusion about what self-concept means and how we approach all of this. And yeah, yeah.
What?
What do you think about casual dating while manifesting in SP? I'm trying to get out of subconscious waiting mode and to feel myself as a high value And to feel myself as high value with women, is it double minded when in 4D I'm with SP? Good question. And this is one that I get often. Is it okay to casually date people while manifesting a specific person? I mean, I'm always in the camp of, yeah, we like absolutely. It's going to be different for everybody. It's really however you feel. It's really however you feel. Some people don't like the idea. It makes them feel uncomfortable. And that's totally fine, right? But yeah, we don't want to put our life on hold. We don't want to like put pause on everything and feel like we're waiting. This is not a waiting game, right? So yeah, and plus if you know in imagination that something is fixed and it is complete, there's nothing left to do. There's at that point it's just the external confirmation that follows, the 3D that follows. So yeah, I mean, absolutely live your life. Don't put anything on hold or feel like you're waiting because this is not a waiting game. How can I ensure that I will stop resurrecting and become one with love slash God when I pass away in this lifetime? I'm glad I'm here, but I'm also ready for non dual existence and infinite bliss. That is beautiful, Northwest Wind. I love that. And how can we ensure? I consciously, I don't know if that's up to the ego self. That is more awareness. That's more. Um, God deciding that one. I know that at some point, yeah, we will all awaken and experience the promise. But really, I mean, I like to look at it as we don't we can have non-duality even in this physical form. Like I don't believe in separation whatsoever, even though it appears that this 3D is very separate, right? It feels like people are outside of me, things are, like I'm this individual person, but I know to my core that that's not true. So um we can experience infinite bliss even in this human form. That's the beauty here. Christ is our own wonderful human imagination, right? So, I mean, I understand what you mean, but I would just practice becoming more familiar with that non-duality and that non-separation from God because we're not separate. We're not separate, and we can feel into that and experience that even in this physical limited form. I hope that makes sense. Uh-oh, Kim. Sorry to hear. 3 weeks ago, SPD on me thinking of coming to Spain and would touch base soon. Days later, he apologized, said he's been busy with work with new staff. I replied, sounds like fun, and no response since. What is going on? Um, as difficult as it might be, don't give your focus and attention to the 3D. Don't give and there's a couple questions here that go into that a little bit. Uh, Going into 3D circumstances, this thing happened, SP did this, and now this is going on. And I understand the frustration and how difficult it can be to not let it affect us. We can get easily sucked back into the 3D circumstances if we're not mindful, if we're not cognizant of that we're doing so. But don't ever give your time and space and energy into circumstances that are not ideal. I would revise whatever may have been going on or revise by, imagining that you've been talking to him this whole time. Imagine that he's already here. The two of you are already together. You're showing him around Spain. You're showing him all the sights, and it's an incredible time. And I would fix to that in imagination. Again, where we can tend to fall off the rails is redirecting our attention back to the 3D circumstance. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I know, no, it's not always the easiest thing, but whenever we can, we want to catch ourselves and redirect the attention. One of my favorite quotes from Neville is that when he said, and I'm slightly paraphrasing, but he said, manifestation comes down to a controlled imagination and well-sustained attention, and really remembering that, right? This is about the controlled imagination, so not letting ourselves get wrapped up in all sorts of things that we don't want, and well-sustained attention. So where are we putting our focus? Where are we driving our attention in the day-to-day? Because if it's going places that's not ideal, we should remedy that. You got this, Kim. You got this. Is it okay to recall our end scene during the day as a memory when bad thoughts come? Also, I think the hardest part is to forgive. Um, yeah, it can certainly feel that way. Is it okay to recall our end scene? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we wanna get to a point where the end scene, whatever we're imagining, when it starts to feel like a memory, that's the sweet spot. That's what we wanna ultimately imagine until we get to that. It will start to feel like something that has already happened or it's already taken place, because if we're identifying with the imagination, right, the inner self or the inner man, as Neville would call it, he would refer to the inner man and the outer man, um, you know, imagination and the ego self. We want to identify with the inner self, the inner man, because to the inner man, if we imagine something and experience it, then as far as we're concerned, it already happened, and thus it feels like a memory. So yeah, absolutely we can. And forgiveness, understandable, completely understandable. I had there were people in my life that I definitely had my ego rear up in defense when the thought of forgiveness came up. But it's one of the best things that we can do, because harboring any kind of resentment is only doing ourselves a disservice. It's not benefiting anybody. Do you know what I mean? So I speak strongly and often about revision, because I mean that is forgiveness. The revision is the art of forgiveness, and it truly is a path to redemption for you, because there's no need to harbor those feelings of anger and resentment. It's never going to benefit ourselves in any way. Yeah, but it may take some time and practice, and that's okay. So I've seen that things manifest only when there is a weird balance of detachment and attachment, but I see my detachment slipping away when SP comes back. How can we keep the state of detachment? Yes, that's an important question, because this is where things can go off the rails. Where a lot of times people self sabotage is when we start to see movement in the 3D, like when the SP finally comes back and starts talking to us again. When we finally see the physical out picturing, it's easy to get sucked back into that world. Really, the best way is to continue to, like, in the day to day, even if you have to set reminders, even if you have to set timers for yourself, but in the day to day, practice going within. Practice going within, and take advantage of this every single night. Make sure you're taking advantage of the wish fulfilled every single night before bed. And there are different things that we can do as far as like detachment exercises to help with that. Um, that is also something that I'm coming out with, how to not fix right on the 3D again once things start to come into fruition. But ultimately, go back to the first principle. Be still and remember who you are. Be still and know that I am God, and that these 3D circumstances that's not real. That's not the real world as much as it feels like it is. All your power lies up here, and sometimes we need to remind ourselves. Little buggers. Thank you for the super chat, Kim. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, you are sweet. I appreciate you so much. What exactly is denying your senses? I know we don't exactly ignore our current 3D, we just accept it as old news. Good question. So to deny your senses is essentially, it's not taking the 3D as final, and not letting ourselves accept the outcome of 3D if it's not what we want, right? So if I'm imagining, let's say I want to manifest wealth and abundance, but the bills are stacking up, and I've got all these things to do. Now, that doesn't mean that we want to neglect the things that we have to do in the 3D. Obviously, we still want to go through the notions. You okay, little baby? Oh, little baby. So sorry. We still want to go through the notions. We like obviously we have to go about we're still having this 3D experience, right? Like and I'm not saying to not pay your bills or just like, put your head in the sand or anything like that. But to deny the senses is to not accept that the 3D around us is solidified. And that imagination is where the true power lies, right? Because I can imagine anything at any time, no matter what, despite the circumstances. But if I'm continuing to be swayed by what the physical world is telling me, that's how we keep ourselves in a feedback loop. So, yeah, it's not literally ignoring the 3D reality as in like putting our head in the sand, but yeah, we don't accept it as final. We don't accept it as final. I manifested my SP back, and third party went away, and things were going great. Then a horrible circumstance slash fear manifested, causing him to tell me how much he loves me but can't be with me, and has to go back to. Oh, I'm so sorry, Empress. I know nothing can stop me from having my SP, but how do I control fearful thoughts so they don't manifest? Uh, yeah, I made a video recently talking about how to deal with negative thoughts, negative intrusive thoughts. It was a recent video too. It was maybe a few videos back. But so I recommend definitely checking that one out. I forget the title off the top of my head, but it's just a few videos back. But essentially, if we are being observant, which we should always be, right? We should always be observant as to what we are thinking, what we are feeling, what we are reacting to. And if we're noticing any kind of fearful, intrusive thoughts coming in, I mean, we don't need to fear them. We don't need to fear our thoughts. Thoughts themselves don't have power in them. Um, but through observation, perhaps there may be something that because a lot of times we may try to just like shove things down or try to ignore it, try to brush it away instead of seeing like I'm still identifying with this fear. So I should maybe revise that. I should maybe goes hand in hand with what I was saying a minute ago about how when our manifestation does show up, it's easy for us to kind of fall off the bandwagon and kind of forget what we've learned here. I certainly did that, and it's nothing that we need to beat ourselves up about. It's nothing like that, but it's an opportunity for us to really observe and see, is there anything that I'm still identifying with that is not wanted, that I do not want to identify with anymore? So that way we can know what to imagine and we can know where to start directing our attention and focus to, if that makes sense. But definitely check out the video that I made on talking about fearful thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and how to deal with those. But yeah, do not let this deter you. The 3D is never final. Never final. No, they're so cute. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you. I'm struggling to buy the pearl and letting go of my Christian evangelical belief system. Is there any resource out there that takes on the Bible book by book, chapter by chapter, or something like that? Good question. Yeah, you mean breaks down the Bible from the mystics' point of view, like the symbolism of the Bible, the esoteric version meaning of the Bible? I know that on Amazon there's I forget the author, but there is a book, like the something interpretation of scripture that, I want maybe Neville Goddard's interpretation of scripture, where it does go, into different books of the Bible and going through what the symbolism is and what it's referring to. I can't off the top of my head, I know that if you go to I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't know if there is a book that specifically goes verse by verse, book by book, um, into the Mystic Translation, but, that's gonna bug me now. Yeah, if you go into Amazon, there's hang on. Oh, another good one is, The Story of Jesus is Persistent Assumption, which is a good one to check out. Um, I forget the name of the other one, damn it. Yeah. I need to go back through and make a list of like, update my list of resources and put that somewhere that's available for everyone. But that said, I it can be very difficult to buy the pearl, understandably so, especially if you grew up in, a Christian evangelical belief system, when it feels very much like there's God outside of you and that this might feel like blasphemy and all of that. Naturally, that could feel very different, and to that, I would say continue to practice building your faith. Continue to practice really seeing and showing and experiencing yourself that your imagination is reality. That is the power within us. That is the creative power of God within us. But it's going to be difficult to buy that pearl and fully go all in on that faith if we don't if we aren't experiencing and seeing for ourselves firsthand. So um, continue to practice building your faith, and that's something all of us should be doing until it is solidified, right? And until we prove to ourselves one way or another that the law is in fact real. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat, B. I reacted to SP saying he doesn't love me and following other girls. I offended him and said I was with other guys. I'm not. And sorry, one second. And now I'm blocked. I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. Revision. Revision is your best friend. Um, do not continue to fixate on the 3D circumstances, especially those kinds. And again, I know, especially when things are showing up that are incredibly painful, incredibly triggering, it can seem so impossible. It's not, but we have to take our attention away from what's going on out here, right? Um, I would recommend maybe even taking a break from social media for a while and just staying away from all of that to the best of your ability. Um, because everyone is ultimately as pushed out. So if people are showing up saying and doing these kinds of things, it's you we must have had a fear, right? There must have been somewhere a belief or assumption that this was ultimately going to happen, which means if we are the ones creating it, even the bad scenarios, then we also have the power to create the good ones as well, right? But taking the attention away from the 3D is a must. It is a must. I know it's difficult. I know how challenging it can seem, but don't accept any of that as final. I would revise all of that and really continue to fix your attention, practice focusing every day carve out time in the day if you have to practice strengthening the imaginal acts and strengthening your conviction in the law. Like, that is how we stop becoming so double-minded and so at the mercy of 3D circumstances. Yeah. But first thing, we gotta revise. We gotta revise. Yeah, persistent revision. Absolutely. Memories are malleable. Memories are changeable. We don't, e and we have studies to show this. Like, we have peer-reviewed studies to show that our memories can change, and they do change. So we shouldn't hold on to memories that feel painful and are not desirable. That's awful. No, no. Continue to revise. Thank you for the super chat, Nostradamus? Nostradamus. Nostradamus. There, I can't talk today. How do we speed things up? Have seen big movement lately. I don't feel anxiety slash lack and don't get triggered often. I just want to enjoy our dates already. We speed it up by taking the attention away from the 3D. uh, Neville would say that the the frequency of time that we spend in the state of the wish fulfilled is more important than I'm sorry, the frequency of occupation of the state is more important than the amount of time it's been. Basically, what he's saying is we want to be imagining morning, noon, and night. We want to become so identified and so familiar with that inner state. And that's going to determine when things show up and how quickly they show up. But if we are continuing to look to the 3D, that is putting a delay on your manifestation, which is why I will say a million times if I have to, stop looking at the 3D. Stop looking to the 3D. If you want to experience something, experience it in your imagination. Like, see yourself and experience yourself going on those dates with SP right now in imagination and let yourself enjoy that. Let yourself feel amazing about that, right? And just continue to do that. Like, fill your consciousness with only the things that you desire to see. That's how we move faster. All right. I have no idea where my last spot was. Let me see if I can try to find it really quick. Bebop and Rocksteady. That's right. You guys catch the references? Where was I? Hello from Liverpool. Hello, Paul. Thank you for being here. We know that the subconscious mind refracts the desire into the 3D, but how does it physically happen? It's so interesting to see how our minds are connected to the world. Absolutely. And fantastic, excellent question. It is fascinating. Like, the mechanics of how this works, like the actual how this all comes into place, I mean, that's going to be a lot of it's going to be beyond our human comprehension. But what I can tell you is that we're always selecting states of consciousness, and we're doing that usually subconsciously. We're learning how to do it more consciously, but yeah, through the imagination is how we select the state or reality to experience. But yeah, and a lot of it's going to be very hard to wrap the head around, but yeah. If you're able, I don't know if you dabble at all into physics. I know a lot of it can be, you know, also beyond comprehension. Even physicists are confused a lot by what they observe, but I would start looking into that world too because it truly is fascinating. Can't wait until one-on-one coaching opens. Want to book a session? Yes, soon, soon. Hi, Missy. When I'm imagining in SATs, I try to put myself in the scene as much as possible, but I'm still aware that I'm lying down in my bed or couch. Any tips to make the scene more vivid? Absolutely. Yeah, and that can take some practice. Well, naturally, at first, we're gonna be still aware that we're lying in our bed, but if you're noticing trouble getting to that place where you are in the scene, basically, um, that tends to come from us trying to jump into the scene too soon. Um, like, not getting ourselves relaxed enough, not getting enough into that groggy state first, is where we typically notice things like that. So I would practice, like, first trying to go deeper, trying to get yourself a bit more relaxed, and there are gonna be times where you fall asleep too soon. That's gonna happen, right? Um, but with practice, you're gonna start to go deeper and deeper and at the same time keep your mind awake. So it's like your body's falling asleep, but your mind is still aware. Um, that's the sweet spot. You may notice, like, color patterns in the back of your eyes. You might notice, like, weird swirls or pictures even. That's good indication that you're in the hypnagogic state. So I would definitely jump on the bandwagon then. Thank you for the super chat. Oh, I'm so sorry if I missed that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hi, Missy. Since it's been 2 years, I seem to forget the love for my SB, making it tough to visualize. But it hurts to forget her, and the thought of moving on is painful. How to visualize if the memories are fading away? Good question. Well, if it seems like the memories are fading, we can start to get more creative instead. Like, because memories are just imaginal acts, anyways, right? So instead, create new memories. Instead of trying to, like, recall from old ones, perhaps, like, what if you're forgetting what they, looked like or what their voice sounded like, um, you can make new memories, you can make new scenes from it, uh, because we never truly forget. Like, the subconscious mind stores everything, literally everything. Is there something specific that reminds you of her, that always, did she have a favorite movie or thing, or did you guys have a favorite activity? Something that if you were to do, like, would invoke the memories coming back. If I hope I'm making sense, but sometimes there's things that we have connected to our specific person, like if they had a certain kind of perfume or if they, had a certain kind of mannerism. By revisiting those things, like, that can help give us a jolt to the memories, and it should start to feel easier to recall what it was like. So I would lean into those and just even practice making new memories, right? Imagining new lovely things. But yeah, start with anything that you consciously identify with her, because there's likely a subconscious. Um, Kind of like when if we walk into a bakery and we notice a smell and all of a sudden we get flooded with memories of being at grandma's house when we were a kid, like that sort of thing. I hope that makes sense. Is it okay to believe in twin souls? You mean like soulmates? I mean, there's no harm in that. I will say that certain people in our lives, we are absolutely meant to connect with, and there is a lot of times that we will like important people in our life. We've met them over many lifetimes. Yeah. Um, Before we were born, as awareness, we may have made a pact to meet with somebody in this lifetime. That is a thing. Yeah. Joseph Ally says to do the imagination scene one time and then drop it. But I could have sworn Neville said in one of his books, imagine until the desire comes to pass. What are your thoughts? Absolutely. Um, I would 100% imagine until either you reach the Sabbath or until it comes to pass. I would imagine morning, noon, and night. Um, because I mean, we absolutely can imagine something once and then drop it. But typically speaking, there would also need to be a strong degree of faith. uh, because if we notice ourselves becoming double-minded, if we notice ourselves looking to the 3D for movement, if we're noticing anything like that, that's indication to us that we've fallen out of the state. Clearly, because I mean, we wouldn't be doing those things. We wouldn't be feeling those things from the place of the wish fulfilled, right? So yeah, Neville would say, like, persist in imagining, continue to imagine until you get to a place where it feels done and you naturally can drop it, or until it comes to fruition. So yeah. I mean, not saying that Joseph Ally is wrong. Maybe that's his way of doing things and that's what works best for him. But if you imagine something once, drop it, and find yourself starting to teeter back into that old story, continue to go back to that imaginal act. Begin to identify with the imaginal self. 100%. Thank you for the super chat. SB keeps telling me he is afraid to leave third party because of his kids. What does it say about my self concept? He keeps being hot and cold. Oh, yeah. No, I'm so sorry. Hot and cold behavior in other people is indication of our own hot and cold behavior in our mind, in our imagination. So if we're noticing others showing up hot and cold, it's because essentially we've been double-minded. Perhaps you feel good about this circumstance, you feel confident that good things are happening with you and SP, um, and then a moment later you start to doubt, you start to get fearful, you start to wonder, is this ever going to happen, like that sort of back and forth will manifest in the 3D as our specific person showing up hot and cold. Like, what are we assuming about this person? Like, that is key. That is key. They are going to show up in whatever shape or form that we are assuming. So I would drop the assumption that he's not gonna, he's not gonna leave, he's not gonna that he's not gonna choose you ultimately. I would drop that. And continue to instead imagine the two of you already being together. What does it say about your self-concept? Well, that's a good chance to really observe and see. We come to identify, we come to find out what our self-concept is, what our beliefs and assumptions are through observation. By noting what we are assuming and believing, what we are internalizing, how we're reacting, that determines how things are showing up in our world. So yeah, I would do away with all of the 3D circumstance, completely shut all of that out, continue to go within, um, and keep yourself fixed on that. Keep yourself fixed on only seeing SP as already being the person you desire to be with and experience. Yeah, I might be skipping a few. The chat's all over the place. Trying to go back to my spot. I recently meditated and imagined my consciousness in the body of a samurai. At some point, I actually began to see green fields and could see my sword, actually hear kids speaking Japanese. Scary. Yes, John. Yes. See how wild that is? You were actually experiencing being a samurai, right? Like the vividness of it. That's why I say like imagination is that is reality, because like, if we have such a strong imaginal act, if we have such a deep meditation or even a dream that feels so real, it's because it is. It's because it is. That's amazing. Continue to exercise that muscle. That is so good. Hello, Lucy. Can I manifest my self-concept by affirmations even if I don't believe them and feel resistance? Mm, I I personally would not recommend trying to beat yourself over the head with affirmations, especially if you're feeling resistance. That is a quick way to enter conflict and burnout. Um, Affirmations, now, again, it's going to be different for everybody. Everybody's experience with affirmations are going to be different. But the majority of people that I have spoken to, um, affirmations will feel better and thus be a pleasant experience if they resonate. Right? We wanna try to find affirmations that we can get behind and that we can feel into. Um, because if you're feeling resistance and you're trying to push against that resistance and you're trying to fight it, that's how we burn out. That is exactly how we like it rarely ends well. It rarely ends well. Um, there's much better, more natural ways to change our conception of self that actually feel good because, guys, at the end of the day, this should feel good. Our imaginal act should feel good. They should feel enjoyable. They should feel fun. Because if it's something we desire, it should feel good, right? If it feels like work, if it feels like a chore, if it feels like we're trying to make ourselves believe something and we're just getting a lot of pushback, that sucks. And that's not a good time. And I personally don't recommend doing that. Um, Now there are people that swear by robotic affirmations, um, but a lot of those times they already had a you know, the affirmations that they were saying robotically were ones that they could get behind, right? They already believed them to some degree or another, right? Um, but yeah, I would not recommend to keep pushing back against resistance. That's not going to be helpful. Hi, Misty. I've seen several videos saying that we must be happy with what we have in the current reality in order to manifest. Could you share your thoughts on this? I disagree. That we must be happy with what we have. Well, what if our 3D circumstances absolutely suck? Like we're supposed to be happy with that? Why? It don't make no sense. No. Um, I wouldn't say that that's like as a prerequisite to manifest something. No. Mm. No. This ultimately comes down to learning to identify with the imaginal acts, learning to identify with the imagination instead of the 3D circumstances. So that way, even if my 3D circumstances absolutely suck, I can go within and experience heaven because the kingdom of heaven is within me, right? Um, versus just trying to because that's putting a condition on what we desire is what that is. That first we have to be happy with the 3D circumstances before we can get our manifestation or before we can even imagine what we desire. That's not true. That's not true. That sounds like very light and fluffy law of attraction stuff. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that we need to be happy, we need to be positive. No. No. Don't try to force yourself to be positive all the time. It 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 does not usually work for the long term. I mean, yes, we absolutely. If we can find things to be grateful for, then absolutely we should. But to try to tell people, "Oh, be happy with your circumstances," even if they're in hell, just that's gonna feel incredibly difficult for some people to do. Not everybody, right? For some people, there is a lot to be thankful for. There's a lot of gratitude to go around, and if we can, if there are things that we can be grateful for, that's one thing, but to say that we have to be happy before we can change the circumstance, no. No. We don't have to take the 3D circumstances into consideration at all. This is all internal work anyways. Greetings, Bev. Hello. Thank you, B. Oh, you're so sweet. Trying to go back. Where the hell was I? Sorry, guys. Hi, Missy. What is ego backlash? What does it look like and how to combat it? Good question. Um, I made a video talking about ego backlash, and I should remember the name of the title because I've mentioned it a few times on live streams in the past. Um, but at the moment, I don't. I can look that up in a second. But ego backlash is essentially it's the old man fighting back. It's the when we notice like if we've gone through like a radical change or if we are changing the self, um, the ego does not like that, right? The ego's job, its main job, its main purpose is self-preservation, and that is preservation of the self, right? So anything that is perceived as new, anything that is a change, anything that is unknown is a threat to the ego. Um, And it what does it look like? Basically, it can show up in a whole bunch of different ways. It can show up as fear, anxiousness, yeah, the pit in the stomach, and it typically comes on after we've been doing particularly well and feeling particularly good. Um, it seems like we've been, like, making great strides. Perhaps we've been having these amazing imaginal acts, and we've been feeling really good, and then seemingly out of nowhere, it's like, boom. We wake up one day and we just feel like absolute crap for no apparent reason. Like nothing's really happened in the 3D to tip that off. That's usually a telltale sign of ego backlash. And it's just the old man fighting back because as the ego, it doesn't, we don't like change, right? Humans fear change. So it is incredibly common. We as you continue to go to the end, as you continue to imagine and identify more with that new state, ego backlash will lessen in intensity and frequency until it goes away. But yeah, I talk about it because it's something that comes up and it can really throw us through a loop if we don't understand what's going on. Because again, it typically comes after we've made a lot of improvements and we've been feeling really good. And then all of a sudden it's like we, took several steps forward and then got thrown back. Um, but yeah, see if I can find the video really quick. One moment, guys. Um, crap. What's the name of that? Why do we struggle to manifest? Understanding resistance and burnout when manifesting. So if you type in Missy Renee struggle to manifest, that video should pop up. But yeah, do not fear the ego backlash. It's just the old man throwing a fit. Hey, Missy, happy Sunday. Thanks again for another live. I look forward to them all. Oh, thank you, April. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Do all religions and spiritualities exist simultaneously because imagination and beliefs create the way we see reality? Mhm. Yep. 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 Imagination and our beliefs create the way that we see our reality. It's the however our external world looks and how it conforms is all going back to imagination and our beliefs and assumptions. Like our imagination tends to follow the route of belief and assumption, right? So if we're when we're manifesting unconsciously, it's from the beliefs and assumptions. Absolutely. Now I'm tempted to manifest kittens. Oh, you should. Best thing ever. Um, Hi, Missy. I'm exhausted trying to figure out the how. I'm on the verge of letting go of the figuring how, but I'm nervous too. How can I feel safe trusting source energy? Yeah. Um, it, the nervousness is from ego. Um, the ego always wants to feel in control, right? The ego self always wants to be 10 steps ahead of everything and have our finger to the pulse. And if we don't, that's where we feel nervous. That's where we feel scared. But if you're exhausted trying to figure out the how, you're not going to be able to figure out the how. That's something that we must come to peace with. From the conscious self, from the very, very limited scope of the conscious mind, we will not know the how. And that's something that we have to make peace with because if we're exhausting ourselves trying to figure it out, that's just gonna lead to burnout, and that's certainly not gonna help us get any closer to what we desire to see expressed in the 3D. So I know it can be scary, but we have to. We have to, and that's where buying the pearl comes in. That's where the faith comes in. The faith that it's not the conscious mind that figures all of this out. It's not anything that we will even know how it shows up. That's not our job. Not our job. But yeah, I highly recommend just just surrendering to it. Just releasing all of that because that's not for us to figure out how to do. Yeah. And if I mean, how do you feel how can you feel more safe trusting? Continue to trust or continue to build your faith in the law. Continue to build your trust and faith in the law. As we continue to build our faith, we're going to be letting go of all of the how and when and what's that going to happen. And yeah, we're not going to consciously know any of that. How can I put the law into testing for small things? I've made a list of 10 things. What do I need to do? Should I visualize them in sats or is it not needed? No, you don't have to when it comes to testing the law with smaller things in a list. No, you don't have to visualize them in sats. You can if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Um, but no, I would not say that that's a needed thing at all. Nope. After you make your list, accept them as done and put the list away and go about your life. Just go about your life. Hello, Monsieur Renee. Hello. Hello, Sarah. How to stay in the state? Is that through affirmations saying things like it is done or thank you, Father? Good question. How to stay in the state? Um, well, it's more practicing going back to the state, because at first it's very likely that we're not going to occupy that state for very long, right? When we're getting familiar with something that is new, a new state of consciousness, it's likely that we're going to visit but not stay long, because we're always going back to what is most dominant for us, the most dominant state for us. So this is more of a practice of continuing to go back there, continuing to go back there in imagination. If you notice yourself starting to gravitate back towards the old story and the states that are unwanted, um, yeah, it's this is where the practice of focused attention and conscious redirection, because the more that we do that, the more that we get familiar with the new state, that's how we ultimately stay there. That's how we wind up making that our new dominant state, if that makes sense. And you can use any technique you want for that. Um, yeah, yeah. The techniques are to help you to imagine and and occupy and visit that state and get familiar with that what that feels like. So, affirmations, visualizing, um, any of that. So long as you feel into it, right? You want to use the techniques in a way that it should elicit a response. It should elicit a feeling. That is ideal. Okay. So yeah, and any which way that you wanna go about that, any way that you want to imagine, just so long as it begins to really elicit that feeling, that, elicit that response, and continue to go back there. Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Leanne. Whenever I feel like I'm successfully imagining and feeling my wish fulfilled for a while, eventually my mind notices there's zero change in my life, even after several days, and my belief starts to die. Any tips? That's completely normal. That's completely normal. Um, yeah, and that's why we want to continue to start to identify with the imagination. Start to identify and allow yourself to feel into that and experience it as reality. Like, make that real. And we can do that. We can absolutely do that because it's when we, again, turn our attention back to the 3D and see that there's been no movement. By doing that, I mean, we're pushing ourselves right out of the state of the wish fulfilled, right? Because you can't be looking for something that you already have, if that makes sense. So if we're noticing there's zero change in the exterior, that's because we're putting too much focus on the exterior. This is an internal practice. This is an inner practice. This is a practice in imagination. So it's getting more familiar with that. When we close our eyes, when we go into imagination, we want to do so as if the 3D no longer exists. Like, we wanna do away with all of that entirely and continue to do that. But if we're looking outside for the external confirmation, w we've fallen out of that state. We've fallen out of that state. Can you give an example on revising on the spot? I find revision to be manifesting, just changing the future by changing the past. Yeah. Yeah, essentially. Um, because the future and the past only exist in our imagination anyways, right? Yeah, an example of revising on the spot could be, if you have a phone call with somebody and they give you news that's not ideal, like as soon as you hang up that phone, imagine that the call went differently. If somebody said that, oh, so and so is sick and in the hospital, close your eyes and imagine that, so and so is doing great. They're vibrant. They're living their best life. I'm purely pulling this from example, right? If you encounter something that's not ideal in the day to day, as soon as you are able to, take a moment to imagine that the encounter went different, right? If you have an exchange with somebody, imagine that it went different, and we can do that on the spot, or right shortly thereafter, and it's a good practice to get into. I always recommend practicing revising the day at the end of the day and revising on the spot. Revision will change your life. Why does my expectation start going up once my SP is here? And I find myself looking for his text and stuff, and I want to rush towards the final manifestation. How can I avoid doing that? Um, Turn the attention away from the 3D. It, this is so common happens that when we start seeing movement from SP or whatever, um, we will start to forget everything and turn our attention back to the 3D. We have to catch ourselves. We have to catch ourselves, right? Yeah. That's a fast and easy way of self-sabotage. Is it like if we throw everything out the window that we've learned about this and then just redirect our attention right back to the 3D. So, continue to practice. If you need to leave a reminder on your phone, if you need to put a wallpaper on your phone that says stop checking the 3D, do so, right? But we have to get out of the habit of getting fixed on the external circumstances that we're always creating. It's just the outpicturing, right? Like, why are we continuing to fix on something that's old news, right? Yeah, it is a practice, but it's a really easy one to fall back into, especially when we started to see the wanted movement and we start getting impatient. Time doesn't exist. You can in imagination, you can be at the altar with SP right now. You can be celebrating your 1-year anniversary with SP right now. You don't have to wait. You don't have to get impatient for anything, right? I don't know if you can hear the birds outside. I think they're fighting. Where's my spot? Where's my spot? Sorry, guys. I'm trying to see where the hell I was. I'm following this dialogue here with love you. You got some good advice. Mhm. It's all us. It's all us. I'm at the point of only seeing and having inner conversations that are positive and in line with my end. All there is to do is just keep this going. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and that's fantastic. Yes, we wanna get to the place where we're only entertaining what we desire to experience in imagination. And that this is a practice of getting to a place where that is all we are fixing on in imagination, is only the things that we desire. We're not having inner fighting with our SP. We're not getting fearful of worst case scenarios, like doing away with all of that. But yes, if you continue to prune that vine, as Neville would say, in imagination, if you continue to sculpt and change and make it the way that you want to experience it in here, it has to outpicture. It has to. Hi, Missy. How do you know if your manifestation is taking too long? If this is due to not living in the end, not living enough in the end, or you planted the seed, you can let it go and it just takes time for it to come. Um, how do you know if it's taking too long? Um, well, observe your inner talking. Observe your reactions. Observe yourself. That's going to tell you where you're dwelling more often than not. Um, yeah, observation is key. Uh, and yeah, most of a lot of the time it's because we are not living enough from the end in imagination, right? Instead, we're going back into the past or worried about the future, unwanted scenarios of the future, or fixed in the 3D. But yeah, once impressed and once in the Sabbath, you'll naturally let it go. You'll naturally detach. You won't have any need or want or desire to do another imaginal act about that thing. Um, yeah. So I would definitely be mindful of what you are entertaining in the day to day. And we have to be very honest with ourselves. We have to be paying attention. Been using revision and imagining that I lived my life with another mom slash family. Is it possible this person will come into my life as a mother figure? How much does revision change our future? Good question. Absolutely, absolutely. It's likely that somebody will come into your life as a mother figure. Revision has a huge impact on our future. I say that with air quotes because the future. It only exists in here, right? But yeah, changing the past will absolutely change your future, 100%. So if you are revising to where um, you had another mom or family, and that was something that you've fixed in your mind, yeah, would not be surprised at all if somebody showed up in your life as a mother figure. That's beautiful. I love that. Chi-chan, hello. Hello. I don't know how long you've been here. I just saw your message. Welcome back. The cats and kittens are meowing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now they're dreaming. Chi-chan, that's wonderful to hear. Think I've reached a point where I no longer have doubts and I no longer have difficulty with anything, but it's always inspiring. Yay, Chi-chan! I love it. I love that. That's the spirit, KB. Hi, Missy. What is the best way to let go of beliefs like needing to act a certain way to be attractive, be mysterious, and play a certain type of mental game with the SP? Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I know, like, societal conditioning is also a thing, and, like, relationship coaches, um, attractiveness and what that is. I know that that absolutely can be a thing. And the best way to let go and change those is start to instead construct something completely new in imagination. Um, make that your sanctuary. Make that your like it is your world, quite literally. The imagination is your world that you get to decide and you get to be whatever you want. Um, without playing games, without needing to do anything, without needing to follow these, you know, stereotypical societal beliefs. Um, we let go of those by changing the beliefs, and we change our beliefs through imagination, right? Um, so, what are you imagining when it comes to SP? Note what you are imagining when you think of SP during the day to day. Like, what is that in context of? What is that in context with? Um, Are you still seeing him as this elusive person who's aloof over there and you need to figure out how to get him? Well, you can change that in imagination. You don't have to play any of those games in imagination. Like you decide, right? So get like practice just playing around with constructing your new world and what that looks like. Make your own damn rules. Don't follow the rules that society laid out for us. Don't ever do that. Because yeah, we change the beliefs, their imagination. I just think so much about the law of assumption nowadays that my mind races all the time. How to just be calm and yet be a master manifester. Yeah, it's easy to overthink all of this. I certainly did. I was queen overthinker. Um, meditation. Meditation will be your very best friend. Your very, very, very best friend. And if you're not used to meditation, if that's something that is new to you, um, it may be challenging at first. That might happen. So even if it's only a couple of minutes, even if it's a minute. Just practicing getting a little bit in your day to day. That really will help with the monkey mind and the racing around all the time, um, and alleviate anxiety. Yeah, yeah. There's so many benefits to meditation. I mean, outside of manifestation, it's just a wonderful practice to get into, but will 1000% help with becoming a master of your mind. A manifestation coach recently said that if you can't manifest someone, it's because you're not meant to. Neville Goddess? I like the play on words, but that is certainly not Neville's teachings. I don't know who that is, but, I yeah, disagree wholeheartedly. When did you start to feel like you really understood how to manifest? Good question. Um, I don't know if it's something that I could pinpoint to, like a specific instance. It was more of a gradual over as I continued to build my faith, there was I do remember a point where I could no longer continue to chalk everything up to coincidence. I remember that. I remember buying the pearl, like, actually buying the pearl. I gave myself the ultimatum of go all in or go all out, because I was continuing to be double-minded, but it really came after even with the logic brain, the rational mind, there's only so many times you can say something is a coincidence before it's not, right? That just comes down to odds and statistics. We can't say that something is an accident or coincidence if you're noticing habitual patterns several times a day, right? Um, what was your question? I feel like I just lost it again. Damn it, chat moves around a lot. Where the hell did you go? Yeah, there wasn't sorry, I just remembered. Yeah, there wasn't one particular thing that happened, like one specific event that made me realize. It came on gradually, but sure enough, the laws never failed. It's never failed. I can look at every single instance in my entire life, and I could see how everything happened the way that it did, and it was where I wasn't here. Thank you for the super chat. How to prevent falling into my old state slash negative thinking. Sometimes I feel that I'm in the wish fulfilled and sometimes not. Sometimes I still get triggered by 3D. How do I not feel like I fail? Yeah. This first it's important to know that this is normal. This is normal, especially when we are new to the law or even if we have been at this for a couple of months or what have you. We are subconsciously always gravitating to whatever dominant state of consciousness we occupy. When we do that without even again, without being conscious of it, that's just what like the ego always wants to go home, basically, right? So if the dominant state of consciousness has been that old unwanted state, there's a period where yeah, we're gonna find ourselves going back and forth. How we ultimately overcome that, how we get that is through continuing to imagine as frequently as we can from the place of already being. that, and really letting ourselves feel into and believe that. Believe that imaginal act is real. Allow yourself to get completely lost in these imaginal acts, and not for the sake of doing this to ultimately get a certain outcome down the road. Like, do it to have the experience of it right now. And we just continue doing that. But note that it's not a failure that you fell back into your old state. We all do that because, again, we're always subconsciously going to be gravitating to whatever dominant state we've been occupying. And that's just what we do as humans, right? So we change that by creating a new dominant state through imagination. Um, so yeah, that does not make you a failure. You can't fail. It's literally impossible to fail. If we can imagine anything, and what we imagine ultimately has to be expressed in reality, we cannot fail unless we decide. Unless we decide. But yeah, falling back into the old state, getting triggered by 3D, these are like literally every human who's found this has gone through this. Everybody, any person who has mastered the law has had this happen. This doesn't reflect poorly on you as a person. This doesn't mean that you are bad at this. No. Um, the inner critic can get really vicious at times, but don't ever listen to that. Don't ever listen to that. Thanks for joining, KB. Thank you for being here. Luna, yes. Oh my god, it just clicked. We have to use the repetition and returning to override the old homeostasis and make the master manifesting the new default slash homeostasis. Yes. Yes. That's why I do what I do. That's why I do. Yeah. A lot of the things I say are repetitive, and I'm well aware of it because you might need to hear something and it's the 1000th time that it will finally click. That's it. Yeah, the repetition is to override that old homeostasis, and that's a great word for it too. Think of the ego's always looking to go back to the whatever the homeostasis is, whatever that normal. If it gets too hot or too cold, it's always gonna go back to what is normal and familiar. So we have to make a new default state. We have to make a new dominant state. That's it. That's it. Hi, Missy, first time on your live. Oh, thank you for being here, Luna. 2 things, 1 non-manifestation related. I love your eyeliner. What brand is it? The eyeliner? Oh god. I don't even remember off the top of my head. I think it's, Kat Von D? I think? I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And if I wanted to manifest a win on a scratch off, any tips? Thank you. Absolutely. Um, imagine, like, who would be the first person you called and told after you won? Imagine that conversation. And allow yourself to really, allow yourself to really, build it out, flesh out what that scene looks like so that you can start to you'll naturally notice an excitement start to build up within you if you do that. I'm a huge fan of inner conversations. It's kind of my jam. It's what we're doing all the time anyways. But you can use any kind of technique that you resonate with if something else works better for you. But yeah, what would you do with the money? Would you buy a new car? Would you put it towards a house? Like, let yourself begin to play with those ideas and feel into that in imagination. Thank you for the super chat. Hello, Missy. How are you? I am good. What to do when we desire something but cannot help but procrastinate? Is that ego fighting back? Yup. Yeah, procrastination is ego backlash. That's resistance. Mhm. Yeah. That's why I say, like, resistance isn't just the, like, anxious, powerful feeling that comes up sometimes. Resistance can be sneaky and subtle, and it shows up in all kinds of ways. In procrastination, not finishing or following through on things, all of that. It's a lot of the unconscious ways that the ego is pushing back. Yep. Watching YouTube videos all day instead of imagining. Uh, That's all that's all resistance. Yay, Luna, I'm so happy to hear it. Good. Chi-chan, you are so beautiful. Yes, consciousness is literally everything, and we are consciousness. If you are already everything, there is nothing you can't achieve and there's nothing that can hinder you because you already are. Yes. 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 Nothing can hinder you because, like, I literally everything exists in consciousness. Consciousness is everything, and you are consciousness. I am consciousness. All of us, everything that we can perceive is consciousness. The kingdom of heaven is within you all. Is this my subconscious? Um, I'm curious. Last night, I had an amazing dream of me and SP reconciling. Although at the end of the dream, he said he couldn't continue because of what other of his friends and family would think and say. Is this my subconscious uncovering some limiting belief around SP not wanting to come back because he's influenced by what others close to him think and say? I mean, sounds like it. Yeah. Do you identify with that story? Does it sound like something like, do you notice a reaction to it? Do you notice feeling, does it feel true? Um, because then, yeah, dreams are a fantastic way of giving us some insight into what's going on subconsciously. It's feedback, basically. But if you're identifying with that story, if that dream feels like believable, if that sounds like him, I would say yeah. But you can change that. So ultimate don't matter. Hi, Missy. I'm new here. Sorry if you've already answered this, but how would I manifest better health for another person? Would the approach be any different from manifesting it for myself? Um, no, very similar. Very similar. In imagination, I would see that person as their very best and healthy self. And I would get very clear on that. Until you notice the feeling of relief, the feeling of, you know, relief is probably the big one here. Right? If you heard the news in the 3D that your friend was doing better, what would be the first feeling? Like, that would probably be relief, right? So I would imagine that person, whether it's them confirming or you hear it from somebody else, but imagine the confirmation that your friend is now in good health and let yourself feel that relief and happiness for that person. Yeah. Where's my spot? All right. I got time for maybe one more question. One or two, maybe. What if I want to try the latter technique, but I'm not good at visualization? Good question. Are you able to feel something like the imaginal sense of touch and imagine it? Like, are you able to, um, like, feel the ladder? Like, feel yourself pulling up as you're climbing a ladder? Are you able to get at least, like, the idea or sensation of that in your mind? Because, you I mean, you can also yeah, you can use the other senses of, like, I guess I just try to, for a moment, picture what that would feel like. Like, would there be any physical sensations? Like, would you notice, like, a stomach drop because you're starting to get, higher and higher off the ground if you have a fear of heights? If there's anything that you can turn to like that. But we can also practice strengthening our visualizing ability. Um, when I started with all of this, I was not able to like, I couldn't see anything. When I closed my eyes, it was like complete darkness. I was a terrible visualizer. But with practice, that's it's night and day. So could you even try like with I guess smaller objects or things like imagining yourself holding a baseball or a rose or anything like that? Something that we can sort of get a clear image of because all of those things have unique textures and smells to them. So if the latter seems too difficult, we can also try it with things that perhaps you can invoke other senses and see if that helps more. Visualization is not the only way to imagine, just FYI. Hey, Missy, I'm not able to understand the difference between taking action in the 3D and actually imagining. I want to get admission to some college, but procrastinate about applying how to manage the 3D. Um, the difference between taking action, I mean, really, it's about taking the like, not only taking the action, but see yourself in imagination as already being at the school. Like, if you have a school that you want to go to, if there's a college in mind that you desire to get into, see yourself on the first day, and go and do admissions, getting your dorm set up, like what, things that you would be doing on your first day. That's the kinds of actions you should be taking in imagination. Um, with inspired action, you will be moved. Like either something will happen, somebody will like reach out to you, something will get the ball rolling, so to speak, to get the bridge unfolding. But there's no action we have to take in the 3D. The only action to take here is seeing yourself first day of college in your university of choice, and just continue to allow yourself to have that experience. And whatever needs to happen to get you from point A to B will happen. You don't need to worry about the how and all of that. None of our concern. But congratulations for getting accepted into your university. I'm excited for you. And on that note, before I go, we'll say goodbye to the babies real quick. Oh, I just saw a super chat come in. I guess it's not. Thank you for that. Thank you for that super chat. How can I convince myself that nothing is impossible? I have a hard time believing that I can manifest someone who lives on the other side of the world. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, I know it's just so cute. So cute. Yeah. How do we convince ourselves? So it's understanding first and foremost that when we say that nothing is impossible, we mean nothing is impossible in imagination, right? Because in imagination, you and your SP are already together. That's already a thing. You can imagine already celebrating your 5-year wedding anniversary if that's where you want it to go. Um, so when we say nothing is impossible, it means that we can imagine anything, and we don't need to get caught up in the 3D circumstances and what the 3D looks like and how is this going to happen. None of that is a concern. We don't have to take any of that into account in imagination. That is our power. That is our creative power. And that's what we want to utilize. And this is all a practice of just that, of not getting ourselves hung up because of the 3D circumstances and just allowing ourselves to imagine what that looks like and what that feels like because it feels awesome to do. It feels truly enjoyable to do. And that's is when we see the unfolding start to happen because what we imagine is what becomes 3D reality. So we don't need to concern ourselves with any of that. It doesn't matter. Like if your SP lived on Mars, you could still manifest. It doesn't matter. And that's what that means. Which one are you? Alright. More kittens times. Yeah. You guys are just waking up. I gotta feed the babies here in a minute. But thank you guys so much again for being here. Sincerely, I always have such a good time. Sundays are my favorite days. Much love to all of you. I hope you have a fantastic start to your week, and I hope to see you here next week with more kitten fun time. Take care, guys. Ow, he will claw the sharp.